Because it's not live.
Wency, are you there?
It's recording.
I see that. So I should end it, right?
Yeah. Just us, these meetings.
Hi.
Hi.
Something happened before and we couldn't find you.
Yes, I know. One of those challenges, technology challenges.
Right?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Good. So let me pull this up real quick. We get everybody started. Can you see me now?
Yep.
We can see you now.
Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, let me start up the
Awesome. We can see the PowerPoint. Yay.
All right, that's a change, right? That's
Yeah.
fantastic. It looks like it's going to be a bright day today, apparently.
Yep.
Good. Good. So what I'll do real quick is I'm just gonna share the PowerPoint on social media real quick. 1 second.
Just go.
I need to.
And once that link is on Facebook right now, the Bikers Against Trafficking page.
I'm about to post it on Human Rights Tampa. Are you able to see that page?
I don't know. I was just on our page to look if there was a spot on it yet.
Okay, so I think what you may have to do, because I think I can do one at a time, just go ahead and locate Human Rights Tampa, and then it's going to appear in about 30 seconds, and then you can share that right there. Yeah.
Okay.
Human Rights Tampa. Is that the no, that's one day ago.
Right. He's not there yet.
Oh, it's not there. You'll see it in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't see it.
Okay, you should be able to see it in 3, 2, 1. Almost there. Half. 3, 2, 1. Half. 1/3. There you go. It should be now.
Yeah, I see it now.
Okay, fantastic.
Right there.
How do we share it though?
Once you
Right
see
here.
it at the bottom, you see the share.
Oh,
You can't share it to a page though.
right post. Public friends. I can't share it to my page though.
All right, well, there's nothing we can do
Let me
about it.
see.
I can share it to my page though.
Yeah, share it on your page individually, and then from there, we should be able to, whether now or later, we should be able to share it there too.
There we go. On your page. Done.
All right, good. So while we get that going, I'm just going to pull up the PowerPoint, and just going to get a fantastic workshop. Okay, good. So we have right now, can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, super. So we have a fantastic workshop. It's going to be human traffic workshop. Learn what human trafficking is and what can be done about it. We have, this is going to be a combined workshop between these amazing people here, Doc and Rainey. Well, they have quite, they have so many stories to share with us today. Let me just do this real quick because I don't want this flipping around. Okay, very good. Okay, good. Can you see my screen well?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. Good. Let me go back now. Good. So two amazing people. I have the pleasure to know them a little bit more. I know them more by their actions than by knowing them in person. We never met in person, but we actually met on the phone. In fact, the first one was today, right? These are their pretty faces on the screen, and then you can see them live right there.
Hi.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your mission and what you guys do and everything else?
So we launched officially in 2016, and we kind of started as two people sitting on a couch deciding that we wanted to do something and not just talk about something. Since then,
We've had the chance to go into many different states, a few countries, and we've been able to really make a difference because we want it to be the hands and feet versus just talk about something. So our mission really is to mobilize people. We ride motorcycles, so we identify with the motorcycle community, but we really identify with anybody with kind of like that mentality, the mentality of just wanting freedom, right? So we are determined to eradicate human sex trafficking. And so we do different things, right? We build awareness, we provide clinical trauma counseling, especially with our partners. We do the job placement, housing assistance, mentoring, and anything and everything that needs to be done.
Awesome. And you guys have been doing this for how long?
we started in 2016.
Okay.
And so I think it's also important to mention, like, you know, we don't just deal on one side, because to stop a problem, You have to work against it from both sides. So while we work with those that have been trafficked, we also, you know, on the demand side, work to provide addictions counseling, interventions, things like that.
Awesome. And I think I'm just going to emphasize on something which is very commendable, because I know, and I've been involved in many activities myself. And even though I love motivation, you know, I know a lot of people that like to motivate others. They post pretty things or data on Facebook and social media, and there is value to it, right? But there's a big gap between knowing something and being able to do it.
Right.
Mhm.
Between knowing and actually taking action. And I think it's extremely commendable, the fact that that's what you guys do. Like you just don't just talk about it. You just go, jump, and actually do. And you're there in the battlefield. So which is amazing. That's what we need, right? In this world. That's the action is what makes the change, right?
Right.
Thanks, Wency.
Yes. Okay, good. So my name is Wency Severi, and I'm with United for Human Rights. I'm here in Florida. A little bit about the what we do here is that we're an international not-for-profit organization dedicated to implementing the United Declaration of Human Rights at local, regional, national, and international levels. There have been many thousands and thousands of programs, and it is right there, is the dissemination of education, right? So everything starts with knowing about it. Doc and Rainey are going to talk some more about this point later, which is, you know, education starts everything. So our membership is comprised of individuals, educators, and groups throughout the world who are actively forwarding the knowledge and protection of human rights by and for all mankind. Our purpose is to provide human rights educational resources and activities that inform, assist, and unite individuals, educators, organizations, and governmental bodies in the dissemination and adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at every level of society. So one thing that we like to do is we know there's a problem there. We know that if human rights were applied or complied or followed by the world will be a much better place. So
Right.
and what we're doing today with Doc and Rainey is what we want to do always, which is connecting with the right people and forwarding the right message and doing just like Doc and Rainey are doing. They're doing things, right? So that's that. Good. Again, we have an exciting workshop, and it's going to be all about human traffic. So what is human trafficking? I know these guys have a lot to say.
So I love the definition that human trafficking is the business of stealing freedom for profit. You know,
Yes.
traffickers, they manipulate, they make promises that they're not going to live up to. They coerce individuals into believing through tactics of seduction, through tactics of fear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yep.
Good. And I know that a lot of people listening to this workshop know this. But Doug and Rainey have been deeply involved in this topic, deeply involved. So I just want to set this up. I want to set this up for the rest of the this workshop, webinar, and so on. Whenever they tell you this, they know. Whenever Doug and Rainey say they've lived this, they have personal experience on this. So I just want to take this, make sure that everybody knows. These guys know what they're talking about. For those watching this, I forgot to mention this earlier. For those watching this on Facebook, if you're interested, this is going to be about maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. We'll see how it goes. For sure, an hour long. And for those interested in receiving a certificate that you have done human trafficking training, human rights training specifically on human trafficking, we will be giving certificates for those who watch the whole workshop. Now, we can control who watches it on Facebook, because Facebook is very interesting. It flashes things all the time, so you don't know who is watching and who is not watching. So you can watch it on Facebook if you want to. If you want the certificate, you have to join us through Zoom. Okay. The Zoom links are on Human Rights Tampa page. If you look for Human Rights Tampa, then you'll see the event, and then you see the link to join us. Okay, you're welcome to watch it however you want it. If you do want the certificate, please join us through Zoom. Okay,
Right,
fantastic.
And one thing I want to add, like, I know there's people from other countries that are watching as well. And sometimes the statistics we give, we try to be global in its context, but we are based in Florida. We have 14 groups around the US and in Canada, and a group in Australia, and partner in the Netherlands and Ukraine. So we have kind of a limited worldview, but the statistics and the methods and everything that we talk about really can be extrapolated to every culture around the world, because human trafficking is everywhere, as everybody is aware or should be aware.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, good. So let's go over human trafficking and human rights. So let's go over human rights first. So every person is entitled to certain fundamental rights simply by the fact of being human. These are called human rights rather than a privilege, which can be taken away at someone's whim. Now, there's an interesting word here, which is entitled. And I know Doug had something that he wanted to say about this point.
Right. When we work with a lot of, especially younger people, right, the word entitled gets kind of connected to them. And then it has this global definition that misdirects, because human rights are these things. Everybody that's born is born with human rights, the way to be treated, the respect and value that's innate within them. And a lot of times we use words and it throws them off. So the word entitled, a lot of times from one generation to another, throws off the whole idea of rights. So an older generation will look at a younger generation and say, you are entitled, right? Because they interpret entitled to mean rights. But we really have to be clear that everybody has rights. And so in the world of human trafficking, the trafficker wants to take away rights. And a lot of times, if that's family members or whoever it is, they try to minimize the rights, and you're sort of raised with the idea that you have no rights. So you have to kind of battle through this concept of entitlement, because that has nothing really to do with the innate value of each person.
Yeah. And I think value is a key word there, because when somebody's constantly calling you entitled, or you're taught that you don't have any rights, you're also taught that you have no value.
Right. Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's a word that has been used a lot in the last, particularly in the last, what, 5-10 years, right?
Yes.
And I'm just going to back that up a little bit more when it comes to human rights. And let's just confront the fact that if human rights were, as we're going to go through this, right? What are the human rights and which ones are them, and so on. If human rights were followed, if they were known, respected, followed, and organizations and governments will be doing whatever it takes to actually make them valid, maybe respected, and so on, the world will be wonderful today.
It would be a much different place. Yep.
Yeah. So the fact that it isn't, we can always trace it back to one of those fundamental concepts, which are only 30 of them, right?
Right.
So yeah, so they're beautiful concepts, but we got a lot to do, and this is why wonderful people like Doc and Rainey, they're working always to make this happen. So so let me just continue with this. There are rights because there are things that are allowed to be, to do, or to have. Okay, those are three state of existence, right? So a person is able to be something, and from that perspective, he's able to do certain things. And then because he's doing something, he's able to have, right? So these rights are there for the protection against people who may want to harm or hurt you. They're also there to help us get along with each other and live in peace.
Yes.
Many people know something about their rights. Generally, they know they have the right to food and to a safe place to stay. They know they have a right to be paid for the work they do, but there are many other rights. When your human rights are not well known by people, abuses such as discrimination, intolerance, injustice, oppression, and slavery can arise. So all these human rights are coming from the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It was born out of the atrocities and enormous loss of life during the World War II. For those who know history, which should be most people, it was a horrible, horrible situation that we have as humans. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights was signed in 1948 to provide a common understanding of what everyone's rights are. It forms the basis for a world built on freedom, justice, and peace. Now, there are 30 human rights in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, there are 30. We're not going to emphasize or we're not going to go all over all of them. We're just going to make a mention here how important it is human trafficking, right? When it comes to violations of human rights.
So one thing I wanted to add, one of the things that's really important to remember is as we go through these or we read them, like we're not going to hit every one, but what you have to understand is if I'm a trafficker, right? If I'm a person that wants to control someone else, part of my determination is which one of these rights can I take away and can I convince them that their natural understanding of is different. So like earlier we read that some people have it like, hey, I deserve a safe place to live or I deserve food. That's a right, but not in the world of trafficking, right? Because a lot of times those are tools of manipulation. Do this, I'll give you food. Yeah. So when you're in the world of human trafficking, right, your mind is warped and changed in ways that you're not even aware. And so what we look at as basic human rights, someone that's being trafficked doesn't believe they have any rights. At least that's what they're being told. And if they try to exhibit any of those rights, there's a punishment.
And for some of them, it's not even just lacking in awareness that they, have a right to these rights because they're a human, but they literally just don't even know them.
Yes. And it's very interesting and fascinating. So when it comes to, we decided to highlight the ones that, these are the first 10, there are 30. So out of the first 10, 8, right? Human trafficking violate 8 of them. For example, well born, free, and equal. Obviously, somebody who's been trafficked, it's not equal to somebody else with liberties. Right. Discrimination, they're being obviously discriminated. The right to life. No slavery, no torture. You have the right no matter where you go. Well, that's not true when it comes to human trafficking, somebody who's been trafficked. Number 8, your human rights are protected by law. Well, we're talking about people that are manipulated in such a way that they don't want to go to the law because they think they're going to get in trouble, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's important to remember. Traffickers will turn the rights, right? So your human rights are protected by law. In a trafficker's mind, right, they're going to try to get you to believe that the law is the enemy. Like you can't trust them. The only person you can really trust is the trafficker. And you are indoctrinated in such a way. Like when I was a kid, right, my dad was a criminal in many different ways, right? And so my world of being trafficked I was taught from a small child, right? The law or any law enforcement is bad, is evil. When we watched movies or read stories, the bad guy was the hero. And I remember seeing people in uniform thinking, that's the bad person, that's the bad person.
Yeah.
Even though all kinds of abuse and molestation was happening to me, I thought my experience was actually normal.
Yeah.
And those people couldn't help me. They would make my experience worse.
Wow. Wow.
And, you know, I want to touch on don't discriminate a little bit, because when you're living in that world, that culture, that life, right? The outside world discriminates against you. They look at you differently because of the way you dress or because of the way you talk, right? And so you feel like you're judged everywhere you go. But then inside of that culture, there's a discrimination that happens as well, you know, based on
Yeah.
where you rank.
Wow. Yeah, it's a whole universe, and I'm so glad we're doing this, because I know this because I was one of them. The understanding of human trafficking is so little that we all, when you don't know, you think human trafficking is that the movie Taken, right? When
Right.
this guy from somewhere in Europe, that, you know, some country that is very little known, the girl gets taken, kidnapped, drugged, and kept in somewhere that nobody will ever find unless your dad is a trained assassin. But it could be happening, and you'll see, your eyes will be open as we go through this presentation, and with all the stories from Doc and Rainey, that it could be happening next to you. It could be happening. It could be your neighbor, right? So that's why I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and this training here. And the last one on this list is no unfair detainment, which is, that's pretty obvious, right?
Right.
Okay, good. So the next 10, we have another 10 here, and out of these 10, we have another 8 that are being violated by human trafficking. For example, we're always innocent till proven guilty. Well, Doc just went over how, you know, it's the manipulation is so high that doesn't compute, right?
Right.
Right. You're always guilty. You're
Right.
guilty if you don't earn enough money. You're guilty if somebody looks at you the wrong way. You're riddled with shame and guilt.
Yeah.
You're told that you're trash.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And also, speaking of the law, somebody could be manipulated in such a way, having all these rights taken away, and then the law could actually take that person in prison for prostitution or anything on those sorts. So they cannot win. So you're bad in this culture, but you're also bad if you want to get out of it because what you were forced to do. So it's such an interesting world. The right to privacy, of course, freedom to move, super important, right? The right to seek a safe place to live. Marriage and family. Okay, so we normally take that for granted, but they are convinced that that is their quote unquote family.
Right.
Right. Well, not only that, but there are situations where some young ladies or, you know, even young men that are being trafficked. For young ladies, you're basically, they title you a breeder. And so your job is to produce children for them to then traffic, because a child is worth more money than an adult. And for men, you're forced to perform sex in the attempts to impregnate the breeder.
Right. Yeah. Again, there's a whole universe there, right? It's a
Right.
whole universe. The right to your own things, freedom of thought, and freedom of expression.
You know, I think the right to your own things is important, because it's not just like, oh, well, this is mine. It's you don't have anything.
Yes.
Pen, not a toothbrush.
Or if you do have anything, there's this overhanging thing like, look, we're letting you use this, but at any point it can be taken away.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes back to manipulation there as well, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Good. Then on the last 10 here, then again, we have 8 out of those 10, the right to democracy. I think you guys wanted to bring something up there.
Right. So a lot of times people think about trafficking and like we get all kinds of messages that, you know, about politics, trying to mix it in, but it's not about politics at all. The right to democracy is the right to freedom. You have the right to be free, right? And really it's politics aside. It doesn't matter what the political leaning of any nation or country or state or anything else, right? Human trafficking is going to happen. So we have to put aside all of that and really focus in on finding freedom for people.
Right.
Yes. Yes. And that's wonderful. I love the way you put it there. It's definitely, yeah, it's amazing. So workers' right. Okay, well, that's a given. That's pretty obvious there, right? Now, this one is not so obvious because it's one of my favorites and nobody pays enough attention to this one, which is the right to play. We look at play as something that you do in your pastime, but it's therapeutic. It's enhanced creativity and has so many things when you have the chance just to do the things you enjoy doing in life, right?
Well, it's part of the developmental process is to be able to play, to be able to unplug, to just have fun. Otherwise, like when a person's trafficked, right, there's a corrosive element that enters the brain and you're forced to do things and your childhood literally is stripped from you. And so because it's stolen, you enter a different world. And so developmentally, right, there's all kinds of impacts that follow through and affect you on every level for the rest of your life.
And I think coming out of that world, if you say to somebody who has, you know, recently got out, what's your favorite color, your favorite hobby, your favorite food? They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't have a clue. And those are pretty basic questions that I think go along with play.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The next ones are also pretty self-explanatory: food and shelter for all, the right to education. Of course, if you want to have somebody doing the things they want them to do, education, it's, you know, education is freedom, right?
Right.
An educated person wouldn't allow certain things because they're wrong. So you want to keep them, you want to keep people in the dark.
Well, but there's also another part to education. Sometimes the more education you have, then if you do fall into being trafficked, there's so much shame and guilt that you don't want to tell anybody because you keep thinking, I should have known better. And so education is like a double-edged sword in that way.
Yes. Wow. That's interesting. And I never thought of that.
And education can be forced on you as a cover up for what's going on too, because in my own personal experience, it was, you go to school, you keep your mouth shut, you involve yourself in extracurricular activities, you get straight A's because nobody can know.
Yeah. Yes. Excellent. Good. So a fair and free world, the right to take responsibility, and number 30, just to wrap it up, is no one can take away your human rights. So the interesting number or statistic when it comes to this is that human trafficking violates, at least, if we dig into it, it may be more, 24 out of the 30 human rights, which is pretty massive.
It is. Yep.
You know, I'm going to say one last thing, that in the beginning, Wency, when you started, you said 2 things that really struck me. You know, human rights regard the ability to be, to do, to have freedom, justice, and peace. And I think when you're in that world, we can all safely agree that you don't have any of that.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad we're talking here. I'm glad you guys are here because I think the world needs to know more, and this is how we help. Okay, so we'll go over some statistics when it comes to human traffic.
Right. So basically, when you think of human trafficking, there's many different subcategories, right? Organs and all kinds of stuff that get trafficked. But let's put them all into two categories and to make a global statement, right? So think of labor trafficking, where people are, used or forced to be a slave and for agriculture, sweatshops, factories, even servants, like domestic servants in a house. In Florida, right, there's a city called Immokalee that's notorious for trafficking people for labor. They bring immigrants in, make these deals that they never follow through, and they grow produce. And there was a big lawsuit in Florida because a lot of fast food restaurants were buying tomatoes and they were involved in labor trafficking by default. So labor trafficking happens in many, many places. The other aspect is sex trafficking, and that's really what we hone in on. We want to eradicate all trafficking, but in particular, right, sex trafficking, because a lot of times we think of like the Taken movies, right? Or we think it's an actual physical act. And that's what can be confusing, because in our day and age, and you see this when the pandemic hit our world, a lot of online activity of human trafficking really skyrocketed. So the sex trafficking is the growing trend is someone's doing something and being forced to do it while others pay to watch. But it's still devaluing and it steals from them. And it gets into your mind and really, really manipulates you.
Yes, yes, perfectly said. So the entire arena of trafficking is at a $150 billion dollar a year industry. Now, $1 billion is a lot of money. No million, but billion. $150 billion is an awful lot of money. So sex trafficking alone is estimated to make up to 66% of the entire industry at $99 billion a year. And this is what Doug was talking about, because we look at trafficking in general is 150, and then almost 100 of that $100 billion is sex trafficking, just the great majority, right?
Yep. Yep.
Good. So to put that into perspective, in 2020, Apple made 64 billion in revenue. McDonald's was 19.21 billion. Exxon was $14.3 billion. So you would have to add Apple, McDonald's, and Exxon to equal or to be close to what human sex trafficking brings in each year.
You had a total for that, didn't you? Is it like 97? Yeah, so it's $97.51 billion if you add the three of them together.
Yeah, so it doesn't even get to it. Right? That's how large it is. Good. So in 2006, human trafficking was considered a $32 billion a year industry, 2006. And in 2017, which, that's just a few years ago, the number increased to 150 billion, over a 300% increase. Right? So this is why what these guys do is so great, and getting together on this topic is so great, because it's not just the person it's not just the trafficker, but there's a responsibility, right? There is a demand somewhere. There's somebody taking those services that they need to be informed what's happening. It's not just that the time that they're taking those services, right?
Right.
But there is a whole, they're contributing to the industry. That's 150 billion industry.
Yeah. And what's really sad is the United States is the #1 consumer and builder of that demand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's fascinating. So It is further estimated that in the United States, human sex trafficking generate $12 billion. In Orlando, a woman who's been sold at a high-end hotel can earn $1.6 million for her trafficker.
Right. And I think it's important to know that these aren't just numbers pulled out of a hat, right? Some of the numbers are estimates and stuff, but a lot of these numbers are based on our experience and based on people we actually have worked with. So we have worked with people in Orlando that this is their reality.
Yes.
So these numbers are very real, as weird and strange as they might seem.
And just to clarify, the $1.6 million is in a single year.
In one single year.
1 year, correct.
Wow. Yeah. So, and I think that's so important. That's so important because when you think about it, it's what they do is large. I cannot explain how, I can't even express how criminal this is, right? You know, we're not talking about stealing a pen from a store or stealing some eggs to feed your children. The violations of human rights and the manipulation is major, and the amount of money they get for it is not light, right? It's not light, and that's the numbers tell you, right?
And what makes human trafficking even worse is there's still quite a few countries in the world today that don't even outlaw human trafficking. And then there's another group of countries that talk bad about it, but there's no penalties. But even in the countries that penalize it, right, you see a proliferation of it. It becomes more and more and more because it gets mixed into the political world and politics, and people that are influential are doing it. And so then when I was in law school years ago, one of my tort professors told me, look, you're never going to create a law against what you do. And so in our culture, in our world, we see that a lot of times we don't come against something because it's something that perhaps we're participating in. And you see one of the ways people get into it is through the use of pornography. And that's so pervasive as well that so we don't outlaw stuff because we have a hard time with it ourselves sometimes.
Yes. Okay, good. Fantastic. That's very well put. So, in other words, it is huge. As we mentioned, human sex trafficking is the second largest source of illegal income in the world behind drugs, and it is the #1 source for financing global terrorism. So
Sorry, I was going to say, I think it's really important to explain, if I have an ounce of cocaine and I sell an ounce of cocaine, I no longer have it. But a human being, I can sell them over and over and over. And some of the individuals that we've worked with, you know, are sold 7 days a week, up to 30 times a day. That's 30 different individuals paying somebody else to violate and rape them.
Yes. Yes, it's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, thank you for that. Good. So how does a person get trafficked? And this will coming back to the whole concept of after this, people should not think that it's going to be the movie Taken. There's so many ways, right?
Right.
So how does a person get trafficked?
So a lot of times when we think of people being trafficked, we don't realize this first one, right? But a large percentage, and we'll get into more, right, of family members, right, actually are the ones that are trafficking their children and even adults, right? Yes. So you have to realize that no place is truly safe.
And I can tell you that personally, my entrance into the world of human trafficking was at the hands of my very own father. It didn't come by somebody that I didn't know. We need to be aware when we're teaching our kids about stranger danger, because it's not just strangers that we need to be concerned about.
Yes.
And there's in a lot of countries, there's like a deception that goes on because people will come in and offer families that are on the poorer side. They'll say, look, let us educate your child, or let us give your child a better life. And they'll give the family members money. And a lot of times the family members may or may not know what's going to really go on, but they're selling their children for something. And
Yeah.
so a lot of that contributes to human trafficking around the world.
Yes. Yeah, and also, and I know you guys just said this, but I'm just going to rephrase it a little bit just to push that point a little bit more. It's happening in the entire world. So you have the poor countries. Literally 2 days ago, I got an email from somebody from Africa, and it's another human rights fighter, and he was telling me how people will come to poor families and they give them a large amount of money, and they said, we're gonna take your child, we'll take care of it, blah blah, take care of him or her, and then we'll give you more money later. So there's manipulation there to the family, and there's such a large amount of money that they obviously, they compromise, and then they never see the kid again. That second, they never see the child again, and they never see any more money either. But they can't really report anything because they were already part of something criminal. They give away a child for money. And then we tend to think, well, that's what happens, but it happens in the United States as well for profit. That's what I was saying, that you guys say this, but I just wanted to emphasize it's happening all over the place, not just for countries, but it's happening here as well.
I mean, even in the United States, it's been confirmed in every city within every state.
Yes. Okay. Good. Fantastic. That's a good stat right there. Good. Number 2 is violence and force.
Yeah, that one kind of speaks for itself, right? People, the violence.
Yeah. Excellent. Number 3 is kidnapping. Well, we talk about the movie Taken right there. That's the one.
Right.
Seduction. How would you guys?
Right. This one is so subtle because it happens in so many different ways, right? We live in a world as connected as the world is with social media. There are more people that are lonely today than at any other point. And so we have this desire to feel connected or to feel valued. And a trafficker really uses that to seduce somebody.
And I think the word value is huge there. And we've talked about it before. We all want to feel like somebody gives, somebody cares.
Yes, we all got that. Yeah. Exactly. The starvation for connections, right?
Right.
Okay, good. The next one is peer recruitment.
Right. A lot of times we don't think there's a lot of trafficking that goes on in schools, right? Where someone's being trafficked and the trafficker kind of makes a deal with them. If they can recruit others, their life becomes a little bit better. So they rise and then don't have to do as much as the new person, right? So there's incredible peer pressure recruitment in schools, in friends. You see a lot of people, especially nowadays, hey, send a picture that's a little scantily made or something, or a nude picture or something, and then they start to use it against them, right? And sometimes it's somebody that, and every single time it happens, we have people tell us, I never thought they or the person that was going to use this against me. And so people are sharing parts of them that with friends, thinking it's safe because they're their friend. And so there's this deception, and a lot of people fall into this and then get manipulated.
Yeah, and I think if we want to take that and turn it into a practical action. Okay, so for those listening, if you're young and you have a situation like that, it doesn't matter who it is, just don't do the wrong thing in the first place, right?
Right.
Don't send that picture in the first place. Don't get involved into things that could potentially get you in trouble later, because you just said it. It was a friend. It was a friend that could be in trouble themselves, and they got trapped into the whole circle, right? Okay.
Right. I think part of it kind of goes into number 6, right, with this befriending process, because it is true that many are so lonely, right, and they feel unloved. And so traffickers, and this is a statistical fact, traffickers search the internet, right? They go through people's Facebook posts. They might send out thousands of connections, and they might get a few people hooked. what traffickers look for are perceived vulnerabilities that are shared online. Because if a trafficker can find that vulnerability, then they will manipulate that person to pretend to meet that need in a very real way, especially in the beginning. And so this befriending process leads somebody on this slow road, right? And we'll talk about it later when it talks about grooming, but there's this process that's important for a trafficker to develop so that this person comes willingly into their world without understanding what they're really doing.
I also
Yes.
want to add, you know, it's easy to sit on maybe our side of things and say, well, just don't do it, right? Don't make the wrong decision. But I think most of us can safely say that we made a bad decision or two in our high school years.
Of course, yes.
So
absolutely.
what do you do if you go to the party and you're with friends and you get a little too drunk? And then you end up finding out that while you were intoxicated, somebody took pictures,
Yes.
you know, or maybe you thought that that girl or that boy really liked you. And they took, you know, you sent them photos. Well, in that moment, you don't think that it's wrong.
Yeah, right.
You know, so what do you do? I mean, I think it's really important to remind people, like, I don't care who's at fault.
Yeah.
If you're in danger, speak up and say something, because regardless of what choice you made, it doesn't mean that somebody has the right, It's still your human rights to not be treated like that.
Right. We
Absolutely.
really need to put into them that there's always hope no matter what.
Yeah.
Never give up on hope.
Good. And that's an excellent point. Somebody on the chat just acknowledged that and said, exactly. And thank you for that,
Thanks.
Rainey. Good. So next one is false advertising for modeling, acting, or dancing opportunities.
So I can tell you that my niece is in high school, locally right here in Central Florida. And she came out of school one day and she sent us this picture and she was like, hey, TT, look at this. They're hiring for models. I'm going to call. And I was like, no, you're not. Right? No, you're not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we see reports all the time from people that call those numbers. They're not looking for models. They're not looking for a dancer or somebody to act. They want you to come, you know, to another state and have photos taken of you, but they're only going to get you a one-way ticket. When they figure out how long it's going to take, they'll get you a ticket back.
Yeah.
And it's even
Yeah.
more subtle than that sometimes, right? So there was a young man that we were working with in his older teenage years in high school, very popular, always wanted to be a model. So he was just walking through the local mall. This older lady, very professionally dressed, approached him and said, oh my goodness, have you ever thought about being a model? And instantly, right, his eyes light up and he's like, oh my
Yeah.
goodness, yes, I have. And she said, oh, I represent a modeling agency. And so she was talking to him and he was just glowing. And she said, you know what? I have a contract and information right in my car. Why don't you come with me? I'll get that for you and we can set that up right away. And he was so caught up in it that he walked with her to the entrance of the mall. And then all of a sudden he had this thought, because we had talked to him previously, and he turned and ran. And then he came and talked to us right afterwards and said, you know what? Because of what you guys told us, you saved my life.
Wow. Good. And that's the power of education right there, right? You just literally save somebody's life right on the spot, right? Because you give that knowledge. Good. So I'm as I mentioned before, extremely appreciative of getting this communication out to people that really need it. Okay, good. So then we have number 8, internet enticement through chat rooms or profile sharing.
And this has gone skyrocketing because of the pandemic, right? But the number one place they know statistically right now where people get enticed into trafficking and sold is Facebook. right? So Facebook, TikTok, if you look on, especially like in TikTok, that's really designed for young people,
Yeah.
they're showing themselves pictures, and there's this thing, there's these announcements, there's people that saying, look, if I made this much money by doing this or going into this kind of place and selling images. And so they're lulled into this world thinking, wow, there's easy, fast money.
Mhm.
And in this culture, everybody lives in that unrealistic reality because they watch reality TV and they want to be like the Kardashians, or they want to be like someone else on TV, and they see them and they want to do it. They want to make that money. And so they're drawn in, and the traffickers are so good at using other teens, especially, or other adults to draw you in without realizing what's being done.
Mhm.
Yeah. Good. Great point. Number 9 is promise of a better life. That's kind of a given right there. It's
Right.
Yeah.
self-explanatory. And number 10, survival sex. Do it to survive.
There was a point where I was in my later teenage years in high school, and I ran away. I got picked up by a hitchhiker, and and so this is in the 80s, right? So it's a different world. They took us into Canada, my friend and I. Once we got into Canada, then this guy turned and started saying to us, look, I'm going to tell the Mounties and stuff that you've done, such and such, and they're going to arrest you unless you do what I say. And because I had been raised thinking law enforcement was bad and evil,
Yeah.
right? We had, in order to survive, because we lived in the back of a pickup truck with one loaf of bread, a pack of bologna, and survived on coffee and putting sugar packets in the coffee to get something to eat, because this guy was manipulating us to survive. You would think that, hey, you would be smart enough to know. And we knew that it was wrong, but there was nowhere to go. There was no help. We felt trapped.
Yeah. Good. Okay, great. Thank you for that story.
I want to say
Yeah.
really quick with the internet enticement, and profile sharing, that for parents that might be watching this, please know the friend of the friend that your children are talking to. And as adults, when we friend somebody and then their friend wants to friend us, but we don't know their friend, you really need to know who you're letting into your social, to your social circles,
Yeah.
regardless of whether it's in person or online.
Yeah, that's a beautiful point. Yeah, knowing not just the direct but indirect connections, right? Paying attention to what they're talking about, paying attention to the names, right? And questioning, like, who is that? Who are you talking to? Yeah. Good.
Oh, hey, we're gonna go to so and so's friend's house. No, you're not.
Exactly. Good. That was excellent advice. Number 11. I am in love with you, but I need help. I'm sure you guys can do
Right.
it.
There's a lot of times like someone will develop a relationship with somebody and then we'll say, look, hey, we ran out of money. I need you to do this just this one time to kind of get us some money. And you start to think that, hey, there's an obligation, right? I need to do this to help the person that I love.
Yeah.
And so that manipulation happens. And not only that, right, but there was another one that's not on our list that I just thought of, right? Sometimes you're in a violent situation and you want to escape the violence or the abuse, and you think someone else offers you, because they do love you or they care about you, right, a better way. And so you leave the place that's violent to go a place that you think is better, but it turns out to be a trap.
Yeah. Okay, good. And we're back to the manipulation part, right? The traffickers will study the situations. They will know, just like we're putting the indicators here,
Right.
they know what the indicators are. On such a profitable business, these guys are looking for those indicators of the people they can traffic, right?
Good.
Wency, that's such an important point. We were in a situation a while back and we were on the Facebook page of a known trafficker. On this individual's Facebook page are, advocates in the anti-human trafficking efforts posting all of this information about how different groups, different individuals, are fighting against human trafficking, what the signs are, and I'm not blaming them. I'm not saying that they were aware of the situation
Yeah.
or whatnot. To me, it was pretty blatant. The way he was dressed, the way he was flashing money and different items, it definitely stated like, hey, something is wrong here. But
Yeah.
for whatever reason, maybe they didn't notice that. And so literally they are sharing all of this information that the anti-human trafficking organizations are putting out, and they're sharing it all over a trafficker's page.
Yeah, when we look at the numbers, right? Let's take another business. I'm a business coach myself. When you look at profitability, you do a profitability study, and then you look at what's best for you so that you can make more money, cut down cost. When you look at how profitable this industry is, over $1 million for one person, this person will study how to do it and how to manipulate and so on. So it's something to be extremely aware. Somebody in the chat just mentioned that a suggestion of getting this data, this valuable data that we're putting out right now to the government, and the answer is yes. We'll be more than happy to put it into any government body, and this is part of the reason we're doing this, because if anybody has any connections, we'd like to know, right? If anybody has any connection out there, help. As mentioned before, it is a in the government, you'll find good hats and bad hats, and that's going to be forever true. So you're going to have
you find that anywhere.
Yeah, anywhere. So you're going to find people that don't want this data to be out for obvious reasons, and then you're going to find people that do. So if anybody in the audience knows somebody that is a good hat, we'll be more than happy to donate our time and dedicate whatever to get the data out.
Yes.
The next one is important to understand about the victims.
Right. So one of the things that's really important is the process of grooming. So when you think of grooming, think about what it takes to develop a relationship of trust. So we've worked with people who were trafficked that their trafficker reached out to them through the internet and took up to 2 years to develop this safety connection. And so by the time 2 years were up, this person really wanted a better life. And then the trafficker was able to say, look, come with me, I'll give it to you. And then the person is thinking, well, this person's not going to do anything wrong to me. I've known them for 2 years. They've been a safe person for me.
Yeah.
Grooming is a process to get you to drop your guard, where you might be wary in the beginning, but after time, right, your guard gets dropped because you get so used to it, or you start to see them in the best of light. And then they can then swoop in and take advantage of you. That grooming behavior happens in a lot of cases, but not all cases. Right.
I want to say too that if it's hard for you to understand how a human being could become, as some people would say, gullible, right? You're not becoming gullible, but that is the term. Think about it, because it's so much easier and more palatable for us to think about animals sometimes, right? So think about getting a dog or a cat from a shelter that maybe has been abused, and how, you want them to trust you. So when you take them out to the bathroom, and they do it, you give them a little treat, you give them extra love, you let them get away with things they might not have gotten away with in the previous home. And you just pour that extra love on them. Well, when you have a person that isn't having such a great life right at the moment, or has come from a bad life, maybe they were poor, maybe their parents were uneducated, maybe they didn't complete school, maybe there was drugs involved, or domestic violence, or sexual abuse in the home. And now here's this person that wants to just love me, and anytime I want to talk, they're there.
Yeah, exactly. Great.
Right.
Very good
So,
point.
Yep. So the grooming, and then the other thing is sexualized behavior, right? So if you were to know me back in time, When I was 5 years old, right? As a 5-year-old, I had very sexualized behavior. Matter of fact, a lot of my memories, like I can remember being under a school bus, totally naked, crunched up in a little ball, but I don't know why I was there. But I remember spending more time without clothes than with clothes, right? And I have this very sexualized behavior and fascination. That is not normal, right? So what happens is from a young age, you get groomed that this is the normal. And it, because of the mechanisms in the brain, right, it can cause chemical reactions that make you feel good. And then you get confused and then you start to do this behavior and it's all you know, right? And so a lot of people that we would classify as victims, whatever, even though I don't like that word, right, demonstrate this behavior because it's the only way they know how to function, right? It's normal to them. And we have to be careful that we don't judge them, right? Or we don't say, oh, that person's so trashy. Look how she dresses in school, or look how he acts, or there's always a story. So we have to be careful that we're not so quick, right, to just judge people. We have to learn the story. And the third one on there, right, is the parties involved can be young and old. We think that sometimes it's just the gullible kids, but we've had teachers in their 30s, even in their 40s, right, be tricked into going to like a party with some date that seemed great. And then at the party, right, and this was actually, it took place in your neck of the woods, Wency, right? They were at a party and there was a glass room in the middle of this party, and she, through a process, ended up in that glass, I want to say cage, but it was a room where she had to do all kinds of things. And afterwards she came and talked to us because she had escaped from that. And she said, if you'd have told me that someone like me could have ended up in a place like that, I never would have thought it. We have, there's people that are older, even elderly, right? No one is exempt from being trafficked. If there's money to be made, they're going to make it. And you have to remember what gets a high release of dopamine in people's brains, and this is also what people don't understand, is the thing that repulses you gives you a powerful hit of dopamine in your brain when it's mixed with sexuality. So a lot of sexual addicts, right, keep upping the ante, not even because they say they like it, but because they want this drug, the dopamine that's connected to that act. So young, old, it's everybody, everywhere.
Yeah, I think that there used to be the stigma that, you know, human trafficking or prostitution, as some people will call it, it was men, you know, doing this to women. Like men were the pimps and women would be the quote unquote prostitutes. No, it's men, women, and children trafficking other men, women, and children. You know, and I think when we say the word prostitution, somehow people get it in their head that it's a choice.
Right.
And I think that kind of brings us to our next point, that it's not a choice. You know, can you imagine what's happened to somebody? You know, what has their life been? Stop asking what's wrong with people and start asking what happened.
Yeah, you can't look at one side of the story, or you can't look at an incomplete picture and say, well, you know, they deserve it. Well, no, you can't do that. You know, there's a whole story behind it. And then unless you've been, or at least trying to be on somebody's shoes, you can't really judge. Judging is it's not acceptable at this point, right?
Right. You have to have a redemptive view, right? Because even if you see that, you know, some people will see like a stereotype of a prostitute walking down the road, an older lady or something, and they'll say, oh, that person is an addict, or there is always a story. That person began as an innocent child, right? Through a process of grooming, happenstance, trauma, whatever it was. There is a story in every human being.
Yes, absolutely. Good. Excellent. So now, as part of the training, one of the things we're bringing up here is the indicators of persons who may be trafficked. And why doing this is because once you know them, then you have to be alert. And Rainey said it right there earlier today when she said, you know, be be aware of that friend of a friend, right? You have to be alert all the time. You have to be listening to your family, their friends, and anything that happens around you. So here's a list of things
Quincy,
to watch for. Yeah, go ahead.
before we get into the list, I think it's really important to say to people, a lot of times we hear this list or we see this list and we're like, okay, this is the checklist. But I want everybody to be aware going into this that this is a very small list, and that the most important thing you can do is to trust your gut. If you see something and every bone in your body is like, that's wrong, something's not right, don't ever be afraid to file a report, because I'm going to tell you now that if it's my kid, I'd rather you report me and be wrong about a situation than not report me and be right.
Right. Got you. Yeah, very good point. Good. So the whole point is to learn the science to end human trafficking. We know that there's big money involved, and we know that's what we're fighting against, right? We're fighting against big money. And it can be done. Of course it can be done, but it's a group effort, right? So it's going to take, and you can't really expect or wait for government to take action, because we know that it's going to happen, and then it's not going to happen, and then the interest will flip somewhere else. And once you put the responsibility on somebody else, then it may not happen, right? And human rights number 29 is you have the right to take responsibility, and that's what we're doing. We're being responsible. We're educating people, and then we do whatever needs to be done to handle and end.
Yeah. So Wendy, I want to add something too. So sometimes, right, we'll talk to people. I was talking to a lady yesterday, right, that also the globalness or the massiveness of the problem is so, like, it's almost like, oh my goodness, right? And that has everybody, when they start to be aware of what it is, that's their impact, right? They're like, oh my goodness, how do you, well, I talked to a guy who works with kids who are being trafficked in Ukraine years ago. And I said, how do you stay focused and driven and not overwhelmed? And we've taken his philosophy, and his philosophy was you focus on one, right? Our goal is to help one person, right? Because we focus on the one to affect the many. Because if you focus on the many, you get so overwhelmed or frustrated that you stop being effective for the one. So wherever you are right now, you can focus on helping one person. You have no idea what impact that will make, but it makes a huge impact. So stay focused on the one, so the globalness of everything and the overwhelmingness of it doesn't sort of sweep you away.
Absolutely. I love that. I love what you just said. I completely love it. Example earlier today, you said you educated one kid. The kid was almost kidnapped or whatever they were going to do, and he realized he did something with you. You saved somebody's life. So how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? How do we handle this elephant? We just handle one person at a time, one webinar at a time, one workshop at a time, one communication at a time, one invitation, right? One invitation to another webinar, or, you know, to talk to Doc and Rainey with one action. Good. So let's go over the first one, which is, does the person appear to be disconnected from family, friends, community organizations, or their house of worship?
I think it's also important to mention that there's the other side of that extreme, right? Overly enmeshed in a situation. You know, I know for me with my family, I always had family around me. I went nowhere alone per se. You know, I didn't have friends at school. I didn't have those normal things, even though I was involved in, you know, extracurricular activities, dance classes, gymnastics classes. But at every one of those things, you know, somebody was there with me. I was not alone because I couldn't talk to anyone. And so if I wasn't immediately in the practice, I needed to be over by, you know, my trafficker.
Excellent. Okay, got you. Good. The next one is, has a child stopped attending school?
Right. So a lot of times, especially if the child's being sold or even an adult who's in college, like a college student, right? All of a sudden there'll be an abrupt behavioral change, or a lot of absences will start, or tardies will start. Those are signs, regardless, that something is going on that might lead you to this reality that someone is being trafficked.
Or a child starts like all of a sudden they're tired every day in school.
Yep.
Good. Okay, good. And this is important for teachers, right?
Yeah.
We should be training teachers in this, since they see the children all the time.
Right. And remember too, someone put in the comments, like helicopter parents too. So remember, this is just a general expose of what someone, the indicators might be, but there's always exceptions, and that's why it takes great discernment, right? So there's sometimes a good person, sometimes a bad person, but you really have to kind of develop this gut sense of like something just doesn't seem right, and to really utilize that spidey sense almost.
And I can say, in regards to helicopter parents, like with my father, who was my trafficker. So yeah, he was there all the time, but he didn't resemble a helicopter parent. He wasn't tidying me up and wiping my face, and like his touch to me even then in public places was inappropriate. The way he placed his hand on my back as though I was his girlfriend and not his child. But I think a lot of people did just that. They chalked it up to, oh, he's a helicopter parent.
Yes.
So just be aware.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. Number 3 is, has the person had a sudden or dramatic change in behavior?
I think you just touched on that with school.
Yep.
We did, absolutely. Number 4 is that juvenile engage in commercial sex acts.
I think it's really important to say that any child, anyone under the age of 18 that is involved in commercial sex is involved in human trafficking. Like they don't need the force, they don't need fraud, they don't need coercion. It automatically is classified as human trafficking.
Yep.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. And there's been a lot of talk about the age, and the government lowering hiring, etc. I just want to push that point a little bit more, which is an excellent point, Rini. We're dealing with children here, right? Under 18, I don't care how mature this person is. If it is commercial sex, I don't care how old it is. Under 18, that's an excellent point. Number 5, is the person disoriented or confused or showing signs of mental or physical abuse? What are the things you think they should be watching for?
Well, anytime you see mental health or confusion, right, you know that there's something going on, and so that becomes a dialogue. And physical abuse, right, you can watch people in the way they walk, the way they move, right? There's a story. Like if you'd have known me in high school and junior high, my toe, right, had been smashed, and for like a year, right, it hadn't, my family wouldn't go to doctors. So it just stayed infected, right?
Yeah.
And so, and people knew it, teachers knew it, right? My coaches would tease me about it, but no one saw that as a sign that something bad was going on.
Yeah, exactly. Good.
I think on the other side of that, again, kind of playing the advocate here, it's really important to realize that, do they appear too perfect? Right? Because I didn't go to school with things like that, but even though I was up all night, you better cover up those circles under your eyes. You better not have a hair out of place. Why are you trying to leave the house without your makeup on? Okay, I'm a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I went to school in full dress every single day.
Wow. Yeah, I think there's a lot of value on all these stories, because we're moving from just data to like, hey, it's happening, it's real, it's right here, right? So thank you.
And then Wednesday too,
yeah, go
one
ahead,
of the
Phil.
comments they asked, is there a way that they can get these indicators? Is this going to be online, or can they access this somehow?
Yeah, so this is obviously a video online, and we can discuss later with you guys. How would you like, if you guys want, we can produce a PDF type of file that can be shared. We also discussed the fact that you guys may, and we can help you with that too. You may create a bit of a some training, like some mini course or something, so people can access this thing. We'll get you guys the data. I think we should discuss this, and then whoever had that question, we'll reach out and we'll provide, right? But I think we'll have a meeting afterwards and see how we can. The whole point of this is to provide data and information so you guys can have it and get better, right? So let's discuss this after the training, and then we'll see how we can provide that.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, so every 30 seconds, another person becomes a victim of human trafficking. Now, we've been doing this so far, and 1 hour and 20 minutes.
Yep.
So two people a minute, right? That's
Yep.
a lot of people. That's a lot of people.
Mhm.
So number 6, does the person have bruises in various stages of healing?
Yep.
Yeah.
So that, you have to just watch them, because that does demonstrate a pattern. Now, remember too, sometimes there are just kids that are super hyperactive and they'll have bruises. So it doesn't mean this guarantees this. It just means this is an indicator, a possibility, a sign.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Yes. Does the person appear fearful, timid, or submissive?
I think that's pretty self-explanatory.
Absolutely. 8, does the person show signs of having been denied food, water, sleep, or medical care?
Right. Yep.
It goes back to your story.
Good. Yeah, go back to the story. Exactly. Yeah, that's perfect story for that, by the way. Number 9, is the person often in the company of someone to whom they defer, who seems to be in control of the situation, where they go, or who they talk to?
I think that relates back to, what I was saying about my father and the way
Yeah.
that I was controlled. I also want to note there, are they standing behind? So think about the way you stand when you're with your wife or you're with your kids, like you stand next to them, right?
Yeah.
But if every time you see them, one individual is kind of behind and, has that downtrodden, like their eyes are downcast.
Right. And that's especially true in North American culture. Other cultures, sometimes it's a little different. So we do have to keep that in mind. But, regardless, it's less than healthy.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Good. So number 10, does the person appear to be coached on what to say?
Or do they frequently change their story?
Good. And as an example, I mean, we can mock up an example here. How would somebody know? Because it says appear to be coached on what to say. I guess it will be repeated, sort of like a robotic answers, right?
Right.
Well, where you really will see it is if you have a dialogue. Because if someone's coached on what to say and you ask a question, a gentle question, they won't know the answer. So they'll kind of revert back to the coached answers. So they might have like 3 or 4 answers, but if you ask this, they don't know how to respond to it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Got you. Okay, good. That's great. Okay. Now, 11, is the person living in unsuitable conditions or appear not to have a stable living situation?
Right.
Bouncing from hotel to hotel.
Yeah.
Right.
Good. Okay, great. Number 12, does the person have freedom of movement? Can the person freely share where they live? Are there unreasonable security measures?
Right. Once again, we got to be kind of careful in our culture, depending on where you are in the world, especially, right? Because sometimes people are really guarded, they're afraid, they want to be protected, especially like anyhow, just wherever you are. Sometimes there's fear,
Yeah.
right? And so sometimes they'll have cameras and stuff. And so sometimes this isn't true and sometimes this is true, right? So you really, once again, it's hard to take any of the indicators by themselves. You need a context to really start to see how it fleshes out. So don't
Yeah.
build anything off of one indicator, but start to see the patterns,
Yeah.
because it definitely helps you see the picture.
Yes. Perfect.
Doesn't
Yeah,
that
but-
apply to like too much freedom as well?
Yeah, that's true. One of my younger brothers, he was on the other side of that, right? In the sense that I didn't have as much freedom, but he was everywhere. And so anybody that knew anything as an adult should have said, well, this kid doesn't have any sort of structure.
Yeah.
They're out all times, day and night, and this is a little kid. Why are they? That would be a serious indicator.
Yeah. Very young and has been out at night after midnight playing around kind of thing. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, good. 13, lack of eye contact or avoid making or holding eye contact.
Yeah, you see a lot of shame and guilt
Yeah.
if a kid is, or even if inherently they feel like something's off, they'll look away or look down, or if, that intimidation factor. And so they might look and then look off, but they're not gonna keep that focus.
Yeah.
And that's always telling something, because regardless,
Yeah.
that is a huge sign of something not being right.
Yes.
I also want to make note that for a female who's being trafficked, right, you have rules. And one of those rules is that you do not make any eye contact or answer a question of another man without the explicit permission of your trafficker.
Mm.
Because if you do, that new male figure, they now own you. And your trafficker, to keep you, would have to purchase you back.
Wow.
So,
Wow. Yeah.
there's definitely a don't look up, keep your head down, don't answer unless I tell you to answer kind of mentality.
We see this a
Wow.
lot in a lot of the events we do where there's a lot of crowds. We'll see people walking and we'll see a person being trafficked who, when they spot us, will look down or look away, right? And they just keep walking. I mean, and so when you're starting to be aware, which is hopefully this process is helping you learn, you
Yeah.
start to see it more and more.
Yes, absolutely.
Because, an interesting statistic is the United Nations does believe that 1 in every 113 people around the world are in danger of being trafficked every moment.
Yes.
So when you think about it, it's everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, 100 people, my kid's school has more than that, right? So,
Right.
and I got basically 2 kids going to different schools right there. That's the number right there. So I know that I don't have to look for, plus Florida has some pretty bad statistics when it comes to Tampa right here close to us on human trafficking.
Yep.
Okay, great. So next one is 14, unhealthy fear of adults. It goes along a little bit with what we said before. Somebody said correctly on the chat that lack of eye contact, it is a sign of fear, which is correct. Unhealthy fear of adults, men, women, authority figures.
Right.
Yeah.
So
The key is unhealthy, because there is a healthy fear that's good, but we're
Yes.
talking unhealthy.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there is no reason. There is a policeman, he's being friendly, maybe passing out some flyers or whatever, and the kid just goes across the street and you go like, whoa, what's happening, right?
Right.
Sometimes that fear will also be exhibited as anger or rudeness.
Yeah.
Because, the goal is to protect the trafficker, to keep the eyes off of what's happening. And so if I can be rude or disrespectful or appear angry to keep, you at bay, then I'm going to do so.
Yes, absolutely. Good. That's an excellent point. They've been indoctrinated not to trust those terminals that can actually save them. So
Right.
as Doc said before, reality flips, right? So
Yes.
now whoever can save them is the enemy.
Yep.
15, significantly older boyfriend or girlfriend.
Yeah, that's a sign, because a lot of times the grooming process, someone that's older has more resources, right? And they'll start to use money especially and give gifts and stuff. And so that's really a warning sign.
Yeah. Okay, good. There's a question from the earlier point. Somebody in Facebook is asking to clarify that a little bit more on the culture factor, when they cannot look at somebody and then the trafficker have to buy them if they do, kind of thing.
Right. That's if someone is currently being trafficked, right? That's that culture, right?
Okay,
Is that what
gotcha.
you mean? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so it really is a different world. And, as far as the way that it's run, they don't live by, society rules. They have their own systems and their own processes. I'd be happy to explain it more. I mean, we definitely don't have the time to get into that today.
Totally.
Yeah.
We can summarize it by saying, when somebody's deep into that culture, they run it as a business and as a pseudo family, and that family has certain codes, right? Do not look at the other trafficker. You're not allowed to do that. If they do, this is what happens, and so on. And so between traffickers, they can buy and sell also the quote unquote products.
Yeah.
So there's a whole basically there's a whole body of
Subculture.
data, subculture right there, which is not necessarily the topic of this. We're trying to give useful data. You're not going to jump into that culture. Most of the audience here are not going to be dealing with that, but it's worth mentioning. And yes, maybe future training as well, because maybe interesting to know as well. And some of these things will be mentioned a little later too, but I think that kind of answers the questions without getting into like, what are the different things, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Good. So number 16, certainly wearing lots of new clothes, revealing clothes, has their manner of dressing changed, right?
Right. So once again, giving gifts to somebody, right, as a way to groom them or draw them in. And a lot of times someone who grows up in a very sexualized culture, or who's in a very sexualized culture, your clothing choices, you may not even be aware, right, that they're appropriate or inappropriate. It's just what you know, or what you've been told to do, right? And so they're signs.
Yeah. Good. Excellent. Good. So here's tattoos, branding, or marks.
So I think that this is really important. I mean, there's, some more obvious ones, I think, kind of like the daddy's girl, and not just saying like, I love my dad with a heart and the date that he passed away, but just the brand of daddy's girl, right? Barcodes, dollar signs, different symbols with a crown or initials. Most people that I've ever met, outside of a world of trafficking, they have some sort of deep meaning as to why they have a tattoo. Maybe they don't have deep meaning. Maybe it's just a drunk night kind of story, right? But they've got something. And individuals that are being trafficked that have that story, we go back to that very rehearsed, very like, this is what it is, this is why I have it. And it just doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense, and they're not excited to tell you about it.
Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, if you come across somebody who's branded with a tattoo like that and needs help, we will help them find somebody to help cover it up.
Yeah.
We'll find funds for it. Don't let that be something that, you're ashamed of, right? We will work with you. And so if there's anything we can do, reach out.
Good. Fantastic. I know somebody asked this before, and I'm going to mention this now. At the end of the webinar, we'll give all the contact data and so on. I know some people said that they wanted a form of being able to reach out and so on. We'll give that data, and you can also go back to the recording of this on social media. But if you're still looking for that, we'll give you all the data at the end of the webinar.
Yeah.
Good. So of course, learn the science to end human traffic. That's the point number 1 is education. Number 18, extremely defensive.
I think I touched on that kind of when
Yeah.
when we were talking about number 14, the unhealthy fear of adults and or men, women, authority figures.
Yes, absolutely. Good. Advanced sexual knowledge. That's pretty obvious, I think.
Yeah,
right?
that's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Hypervigilant or paranoid behavior.
Right. Anybody that's been trafficked, right? The scientific thing is in the side of your brain, there's an HPA axis, right? And so that HPA axis is connected to your early warning sign. And so your amygdala, right, registers everything that happens, whether it's a threat or not. So if you've been trafficked, your threat alert, when you start a normal day, whatever that is already up high. So that means you have a radar on. You're constantly searching and being worried about what might take place, right?
Yeah.
Someone who comes out of that world or who is being trafficked or who has trauma is going to have this part of them, and it's going to have that part of them forever, right?
Yeah.
But in the beginning, that's a very important sign to see.
Good.
Like I remember
Okay.
one time we were out and my dad said a duck, right? Or someone said a duck, right? And we hit the ground, right? Because we're like, what's going to get us, right? And it was like a nervous, it took me years not to be as jumpy, right? Because that
Yeah.
hypervigilant thing said threat, threat, threat. And so even now, right, if I go into a restaurant, right, and I'm 55 years removed, I still, that hypervigilant thing I can't turn off, right?
Gotcha.
So that is a sign.
And I think
Gotcha.
when we're talking about lack of eye contact, that's a really good point, because maybe they look like they're looking at you, but they're looking all around. So really pay attention to, is somebody engaged with me?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a body language to watch for, that the eye motion could be multiple points on this checklist here when it comes to being vigilant, paranoid, fearful, not wanting to look at having orders not to look, etc., right? 21, secrecy about their whereabouts.
Do you want that one?
Yeah. So this next one, right? There's a secrecy, obviously, because they don't want to tell people stuff. They might be secret about their life. And, you know, growing up for me, secrets were really huge. We didn't tell anybody anything, right? And so if you tried to learn stuff, you wouldn't learn much at all, right? Now, I was thinking about this one as well. Sometimes if you're talking to someone and there's an indicator, or they actually tell you something is happening and then they say what it is, it's really important that we don't overreact or feel like, oh, I'm so sorry for you. We don't want to add to their shame, right? We want to be able to hear it, kind of keep your emotions in check, be appropriate, and then try to reach out and help or assist in some way, not create this big sympathetic response, because then it becomes all about you versus them.
Gotcha. Good.
In regards to secrecy too, like sometimes you'll notice like they won't answer questions about, you know, A, B, or C, but then out of nowhere they're oversharing about what their dog did, or, you know, the color of their shoes.
Yeah.
Things that don't matter but distract you from the real points.
That's a cool point. Good. All right, good. So next point is 22, keeping unusual hours. I think we mentioned that
we
earlier.
touched on that.
Yeah. Good. And 23, explicitly online sexual profiles.
Yeah, and you see that everywhere. Like if you just open up a TikTok account, you'll start to see them like crazy right before you. You can't believe they're even there, but they're there.
Okay, good.
And I think it's important to note that there are entire sectors of the internet that are dedicated to these types of profiles and posts, and even places where Johns can, you know, write a report card on the individual.
Yes. I don't know if everybody knows what you mentioned, John, right?
Yes.
It should define it. Just define it. So I know some people in the audience won't know what that means.
John, the simplest way to say it is a sex buyer.
Gotcha. Good. Good. Excellent. So social media is a good way. Social media is good and bad. It could be a fantastic, amazing way to connect, but it's also a place to connect those who should be connected, right?
Right.
Mhm.
So good. So in terms of us, in terms of the audience here, that's something to watch for on your social media. That's something to watch for on your kids' friends, or as Rennie mentioned it, your friends of friends, right? You
Right.
can do your little intel work sometimes when you suspect.
Right. And remember,
something.
And this is more than just kids too. This is adults doing this.
Yeah.
Right. As well.
Yeah.
And based on a comment that that somebody just made, I didn't see it clearly, but it was, which can also be, I think they said Jane's.
Right.
So yeah, they could be called, John's, Jane's, James. They will also label themselves as hobbyists, but they won't list a hobby, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
They just literally like, I am a hobbyist.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, makes sense. Good. Thank you for that clarification. Next one is 24, family dysfunction. Now, there's a few things here that we should go over, which is important, I think, to know.
So 50%, according to Counter Trafficking Data Collaborative Report, 50% of all child trafficking cases begin within the family. 36% of them, it's directly a family member, whether it's, mom, dad, aunt, uncle, brother, cousin, sister, whatever, that was directly, and intentionally involved in the exploitation. Out of that 36%, 64% of those traffickers were mothers, often assisted by a non-relative. And in 82% of total cases, payment was drugs. A human life was sold for drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah. We worked with people that an act of sex was bought for one pill, right? I mean, just something that you wouldn't think.
$10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
So while we can think about it in those big numbers, like we talked about earlier, somebody making $1.6 million in a year, we need to keep in mind that it also happens on a much different scale.
Yeah. Good. That's the excellent point you made. Number 25, grew up in foster care.
Right. So
go ahead.
There's a lot of statistics that talk about the danger of foster care. And years ago, I was actually a foster care therapist, right? And you could see this firsthand when we were working with kids. But it could be anyone, right? But there is a high propensity for people that are in foster care, or even like in Florida in the DCF system, there's a high propensity for them to be trafficked, right? Because they do exhibit such vulnerabilities, right? Just being in that situation, and a trafficker thrives on that.
Yeah.
They may have been removed from a home because there was sexual abuse, or because of addiction being in that home, or within the foster care family that they've been placed into.
Yeah.
There could be issues there of sexual abuse, but don't limit it. Don't limit it to something that only happens within the system, because I, for one, was never part of a system. We didn't take food stamps. We didn't get government aid. We didn't have Medicaid or Medicare. My father was an upstanding citizen. He was active in our church and our community. I went to private school. Money was not the motivator. It was power.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you for that. Okay, 26, inconsistencies in potential victim stories about where they live and who they live with.
Yeah, I think we kind of touched on that.
We covered that. Yes, absolutely. 27, that's the person lack personal possessions, no access to personal documents or identification.
Yeah, believe it or not, they won't have a driver's license or passport. Someone will hold that information. And we've worked with people that have nothing, right? And you have to kind of rebuild and get those documents, but that's really, really common.
Okay,
Um,
good.
Sometimes they'll carry a purse or a book bag, but the only thing in there are sexual lubricants, maybe condoms. It's not what you would think of when you think of a purse.
Yeah, exactly. Good. This again goes, there's a little bit on definitions as well. Terms like daddy, wifey, bottom track. You want to go over some of these words and what they mean?
Yeah. So remember that we stated earlier, I think Wency, you said it, that it's created to look like a family system, right?
Yeah.
And so the individuals being trafficked will call their trafficker, you know, daddy, mommy, obviously, if it's a female. But looking at it from a female perspective, that's my daddy, right?
Yeah.
Other individuals that are being trafficked with you become your wifey or your wife-in-law. The word bottom is actually kind of a backwards term. So they live in what's known as a stable, and the girls complete the stable just like horses would, right? The term is bottom, and pardon my language for a minute, it's actually bottom bitch.
Wow.
She's actually second in command to him. And while it's not a great place to be, by being the bottom bitch, you don't have to participate in sex acts as often, but you do have to make sure that the other females in the stable meet those quotas. If you're not posted up in a hotel, as they say, or doing out calls, meaning you're going to somebody's house, then you work a track. It means that you're walking, you're sitting in hotels, in a lobby, things like that. And the life is how it's defined. You know, they call it the life, or they call it the game.
And that's describe their ecosystem, their culture,
Right.
what they do. Yeah.
So, you know, one individual who's being trafficked talking to another, it's, you know, how long have you been in the game?
Yeah, got you. Makes
You know?
sense. Yeah, it's definitely it's a whole culture that developed their own codes, nomenclature, and so
Right.
on, right? Okay, great. So 29 mentions being out of pocket. Talk about tricks or chons. This is a little bit more on that.
Yeah, and I think we talked about the term Johns already. A trick can be a John, but a trick is also the, I guess another way to say it is the date. It's the actual encounter. So when somebody purchases you and they come in to essentially rape you because you're not a willing party, that's considered the trick. I turned a trick. I had a date. And being out of pocket, so that refers to like you've done something wrong. And so, you know, you'll hear them say like, oh, you're out of pocket, or keep stepping out like that. I'm gonna show you what it means. And which is essentially them telling you that you're about to get beat.
Got it.
So
I got you. Okay, makes sense. Number 30, poor general health, has one or more untreated STDs or multiple pregnancies. Well, that's.
Yeah, and remember too, right? A lot of times the person that's being trafficked, right, has no idea that what's happening to them is abnormal. Some do, some don't, right? In my case, when I went to college, I was a sophomore in college before I watched a video by accident, and it dawned on me what had happened to me. I thought my world was normal. So then if you were to tell somebody, hey, were you trafficked, or hey, did something happen? They don't necessarily interpret their behavior as something happened to me. Because when you do that, it reorients the world, right? And so when I had that epiphany, everything in my world became even worse because I realized how bad things really were. Until then, I really had the idea that this is kind of what everybody had to deal with.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was so abnormal.
Yeah. Got it. Good. So before moving on what to do, I'm just going to make a mention on what an indicator is, right? Until we know, we only know we don't know, right? So the indicators are things that can lead to something, sometimes lead to nothing, right? Sometimes without falling into a witch hunting that everybody's trafficking out there and everybody's wrong, we just have to be alert. And we can actually save somebody's life by knowing this data and being constantly watching. So putting it together. So if I noticed somebody in the family or somebody out of the family or somebody who I'm a student of mine who's acting up, he's out of communication, he's afraid, and there's a change of behavior or any of those points before, so that the most human thing to do is to ask or to basically find more data, correct?
Right.
Yeah. I want to note real quick, when it comes to terms, they can be a very insightful thing to know. It's really important that if you're dealing with somebody who's been trafficked and you're not part of that world, you don't naturally know these terms, don't use them. You will lose all credibility because you're no longer being authentic.
Right. Okay.
So be who you are, right? As you try to partner with people or help people or assist, always stay genuine.
Yes, perfect. Thank you for that. Good. So what to do? Let's put, now that you have a basic understanding of potential indicators of human trafficking, what can we do when we find that somebody is at risk or somebody's been involved in this, right? So first point is educate yourself regarding human trafficking and human rights in general.
Right. And I wanted to add something about that. There's a psychological reason why, this awareness thing is so important, right? There's an actual phenomenon known as the Bader-Meinhof phenomenon. The subconscious in every human being, right, is selective in what it gives attention to. It's like every second of the day, you get like 40,000 bits of data, and you can only focus in like 400 or 40, something like that, right? And so all this images and all this is coming on. So what you teach yourself to do, right, is the human mind strives to understand patterns that are important to you, right? It's called frequency illusion or confirmation bias. Well, so once we understand that human trafficking is everywhere, then you will start to actually see the signs. So the reason we do this awareness part is that it starts to get into your brain, and then if you absorb it, you will start to see it. That is the way your brain functions. And so if everybody was observing it, we could truly make a bigger difference.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to commend or validate your work here. Obviously, helping somebody is wonderful. It's one of probably, when it comes down to happiness, helping others is the closest you're going to get to true happiness. And you're not just, what you guys are doing is not just helping somebody, but in many cases, you're actually saving somebody's life. So I just want to validate the work you do. And I think it's very commendable. And I really appreciate the time you're taking. We'll talk a little bit more about this, but I wanted to take that chance since, awareness and so on.
Oh, Wency, we're really grateful for the partnership with you guys as well.
Yeah. And I just want to add, one thing to that, like, I couldn't appreciate what you say more. But we don't save anyone. We try really hard not to use words like victim or survivor, rescued or saved. In that world, victims die. Survivor, if you look it up in a thesaurus, actually means what's left over, remnants, debris. It's not a positive term in our world.
Right.
And then, in regards to being rescued or saved, think about how strong somebody has to be to have gone through an ordeal like that and still wake up and take a breath the next day. So
Yes.
we assist them on their journey. We partner with them any way that we can. But I don't want to be a savior. You know, and I know that the work that you guys do with human rights, like, you get that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Good. So let me just go through real quick.
Yeah.
Because I see comments on how to contact everybody and so on. So let me just go through the actions that we want you to do. So in terms of education, we do have a free course in human rights. If you go to youthforhumanrights.org, the page will look like this, and it says enroll now. It's a free course. It will walk you through the 30 human rights, which are necessary to really start opening your eyes. And then from that perspective, you can digest everything that we've talked about here. So those are the indicators to help somebody so that they're not the effect of, you know, everything that is going on out there.
Right, and let me say something about that. Number one, that video series is amazing. But the other thing is if you're talking to someone who is being trafficked, sometimes you can't talk to them about trafficking, but you can talk to them about human rights. So it gives you a great tool that you can use in addition to the other tools that you know.
Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. The next one is to spread the word. What can we do? Spread the word. Help to increase awareness. Invite others to do the free human rights course. Okay, so that's free. That's for you to be there. In fact, we have those courses in, I don't know how many languages, pretty much every language you can think of. So I know we have people, I was looking at the chat, we have people from South America, we have people from Europe, we have people obviously from the United States. Anybody in this webinar, I can guarantee you'll find your language of preference in there, and then you can do those online courses. And the next point is, if you witness human trafficking, report it to National Human Trafficking Hotline, 888-3737-888.
Now remember, this is a United States hotline.
Yes.
Canada has its own hotline. Other countries, some do, some don't. So it might be a little trickier depending on where you are.
I do have a really broad resource with all of them that I can find for the entire world. So if somebody needs something, you can always reach out to me and I will be glad to share that resource with you. And I think that I shared it with Christian and Wency as well.
Perfect. Yes. We will talk a little bit about how to reach each other in a second, because definitely we want to, for those who are interested in connecting for future projects, more information, they need help or whatever that may be. Obviously, we want to provide that too. You can text that number right there. Again, that's the United States. Volunteer your time. If you're interested in helping, there's plenty of things that Doc and Rainey can do.
We can put you to work.
Yes, good.
And remember, if you can't volunteer with us for some reason, but you want to know where, reach out to us and we'll get you connected.
Yeah.
There's plenty of opportunities. You just have to desire to put the hands and feet to it.
I have one more thing to say about the national human trafficking number. Those calls are anonymous. They don't really care who you are. What they want to know is what information you have.
Good.
So, you know, you can either call or you can text.
Good. Fantastic. In terms of being a human rights advocate, I want to mention one more thing. In United for Human Rights, our mission is to spread the word on human rights. If you are interested in participating in webinars, let us know. If you're interested in teaching others human rights, we will train you on how to do it. We will give you training on being a speaker on human rights. We will give you the materials. That is all. We're a non-profit organization, and we just do it because we want people to be aware of it, and we want people to be better. We want to change the world through human rights. And that is exactly why we have friends like Doc and Rainey, who are amazing people. And yeah, we just love that synergy of like-minded people. So Another way you can, sometimes you don't have the time or you don't have the time, you can always donate. And in terms of donation, again, you can reach us or you can reach them. I'm sure we can utilize any resources, correct, Doc?
Yep.
Rainey?
Yep.
Good. Fantastic. Good. So here's what this is their page, by the way, their website, bikersagainsttrafficking.org. You can find them there. You can have their you'll find their contact data and all the amazing things they've done. Reach them out there. Now I'm going to put something on the chat right now, which is a survey. I want you to do this survey. Let me put it up real quick. It's a survey that help us to improve. That's right. So let me put the link right in there.
And remember, I want to add, you don't have to ride a motorcycle to be part of Bikers Against Trafficking. We have probably half of the people that are involved don't ride at all. So we just happen to ride. That's how we started. And we represent that. But we have people, like if you look at this picture, right? The people on the left, Rainey on the front, they don't ride. And some do, some don't, right? And so we just work, and we work together, and we work with pretty much anyone who will want to fight.
I think the
Good.
first 2 rows, there's only 6
I personally think it's pretty cool that I thought I was excited about buying a bike though, but
well,
Hey,
we'll teach you how to do it.
One.
Yeah, Wednesday we'll talk about that, man.
All right, awesome. So I just posted the link. It's a Google form. So click on that link. Let's see. Just put in the chat that if you're able to open it. Let me post it one more time, okay? Okay, good. So I know some people are saying that you don't see the link. I'm going to post it right now. I'm going to post it right now. So it's going to be
the link.
Yeah. I see a link.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay,
it goes quick if people are commenting though, but
yeah,
it is in
there.
Commenting. Yeah, you might have to cut and paste if you click on it and it doesn't open.
Yeah,
that might be what they're saying. Yeah, so you might have to click and then copy it and move it over.
Oh, I see. Okay, good. So okay, let me see if
and you probably, if you're only going to see it on Zoom, right, not Facebook.
Correct. Yeah. We're just going to do it this way because I can't really control how much time people watch on Facebook.
Right, but you can on Facebook. You can comment like what you thought and what you think, and tips and stuff, and we'll try to read those and get back to you.
Absolutely. Good. So we will send another email with everybody that was here, anybody that came to the webinar, and there we go. Let's see. Okay, it looks like it may be are you guys able to click on the link or no? No.
I don't know. I just resent it. I didn't click it. I'll click it right now.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, it works.
It works. It opens, right?
Yep, it does.
Good.
Yeah, and I reposted it to. Oh wait, it still says all panelists.
Oh, you know what?
Oh, it's just going to the panelists.
That's sorry. Now it's going. Sorry, it's going right now.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody.
Sorry, that's the problem. Okay, good.
Got it.
Yep. Yay.
There it is. Okay, great. Perfect. We did it. Yeah. Fantastic. Good. So please fill out the survey. We read every one of them because we want to know what we did and what we can do for the future as well. It's very important to us that we do this to help. So please do that. And just to wrap this up, again, I'm sure this will be a partnership that we can do more things in the future. I want you guys to send Doug and Rainey a beautiful acknowledgement Send in your love. These guys are amazing people that, you know, again, this is the beginning of a partnership that I'm sure we're going to be doing some more things together.
Yep,
Okay.
and we're honored for everybody that
Thank you all for your time.
sacrificed on a Saturday morning. We really appreciate
Oh,
it.
and yes, I know, right? Some
Yeah.
people woke up earlier.
Yeah.
Here for the training, we have over 100 people watching, either here or in the different platforms. I think it was way more than 100. So thank you for that. And I know some people couldn't make it. They messaged me that they couldn't make it. So that's okay. This will be on social media, and I will have a link also for this training that I can send. Okay, so if you're interested on rewatching it or sending it to somebody else, I will have a link later. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Yep, thanks,
Fantastic.
everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you, Rennie. You guys did
Thank you, Lindsay.
amazing. Thank
All
you
right.
for what you do. Bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Stay on. Oh, I guess we have. I thought we were going to talk.